So you're buying a home, or maybe you own a home. Do you know what you need? You know what you probably have is homeowners insurance. And I tell you, homeowners insurance can be so involved and so complicated and so expensive. I've had a incredible, really enjoyable conversation with a local agent, Mr. Tom Roney, and I'm going to share this conversation with you, and we're going to cover many topics that I'm sure you're going to appreciate. Stick around. Hi, welcome back. My name's Joe Brown. I'm a realtor with Century 21, Lisbeth Beggins, located in South Tampa. Thank you so much for being here with me today. So if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, give it a thumbs up. If you hear something that's interesting to you or you have a question about something, please leave a comment below. But most importantly, share this video, share this link with your friends and family who you think could benefit from this information. I do these videos and I share this information because I want to be of value to the community. So, and you know people I don't know. So if you know people that can benefit from this, please share. You're not going to hurt my feelings, okay? So over probably the past month, I have shared, I've shared a video, I've shared a conversation that I had with Mr. Tom Roney of Roney Insurance. And be sure to check the show notes below for his contact information, right? So, and over the videos, we talked about what homeowners insurance is in general. We talked about what insurance agents look for in home inspection and 4-point inspection. Tom talked about roof and roof issues and how that impacts insurance. Well, a big issue that we face, especially in South Tampa and Pinellas County in some areas, are flood and flood insurance and different types of flood and what it means for us. So in today's video, we're going to pick up our conversation about flooding and flood policies. So Tom, take it away. A few minutes ago, you talked about flood insurance. So if we can shift our focus to flood. So you are a general lines carrier, but if I understood what you said, you don't write the flood insurance, or do you?
No, we write the flood insurance.
Okay.
So
but it's
the flood insurance.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
The flood insurance, there's really two options for flood insurance, or three actually options for flood insurance now in Florida. You have the National Flood Insurance Program, which is underwritten by FEMA, the federal government, and backed by them. You have the private flood market now that's really coming around and establishing themselves as well. And some of the homeowner carriers are now have an endorsement that they will include flood coverage as well on their policy. So it's not all of the homeowner carriers, but certain carriers are, coming around with a flood endorsement on that policy.
So I'm looking at what you have on the screen. So if there is a home here in South Tampa, because that's where I live. So if there's a home valued at $600,000, then really the National Flood Insurance Program would not be the carrier to look at, since they have a limit of $250,000. Is that right?
Well, they would be the primary insurance. You could write an excess flood policy above that if you wanted to insure the property to the total replacement cost value. Typically, the mortgage companies are only going to require that building limit of $250,000 on the policy. So they are willing, in most instances, to accept that as proof of flood insurance on the loan. So that's not saying that the home is properly insured from our perspective or from the homeowner's perspective, but from a standpoint of insuring it to meet the requirements of most of the loans out there, typically the mortgage companies will accept the federal policy.
Okay. And
But
then
we can write an excess policy above that if you want to get a higher limit as well. We can go with the flood policy up to 250 and then write, in your scenario, a $350,000 excess policy to get us up to that 600,000 limit.
okay. And would that be through the NFIP or a private?
That would be through private for the excess. So we would go with the NFIP for the primary insurance and then an excess policy through another private carrier.
And so as we sell homes and market homes, we have to put a flood zone, whether a house is in a flood zone. So let's say a buyer is buying a home and it's in zone AE, so they'll need flood insurance. What will they need to provide to the insurance company to get a policy? Like, do they have to get a survey?
Well, in many instances, an elevation certificate can be a benefit to them to provide to the insurance agent in order to rate that policy. It gives you specific information really about the elevation of that home and compared to the base flood elevation. It also talks about the elevation of, let's say, machinery or equipment around the home as well, or machinery and equipment that might be in the garage of that home for rating purposes. Not all of the private flood policies, they can be rated in many times without an elevation certificate. But an elevation certificate could be a benefit to them in terms of rating and getting the best possible price.
Okay. And then when we talk about flood, we typically, I think about rising water. But whether you're on the waterfront and you have a high tide or hurricane or tropical storm, in fact, Fred's going through Florida now, right?
Correct.
So you have that tidal surge. But what about other flooding situations like backup of drains, or maybe a backup of a retention pond?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about backup of sewer drains, that's a separate coverage typically on the homeowner's policy. So that's something that you would really want to include on your homeowner's insurance policy to get coverage for backup of sewer or drains as well. So typically our agency quotes all of our homeowners policies with that coverage on it. We advise the customer and let them make an informed decision as to whether or not they want to include that coverage or remove that coverage on their policy. It typically isn't that costly to add that coverage. It's typically a sublimit on the policy, but you can get different sublimits many times for that backup of sewer or drains. Rising water, let's say from a pond outside or from, let's say the bay, would be classified under rising water under the flood policy. So that would not be covered under the standard homeowners policy. You would want to make sure that you have flood insurance. And certainly our area and the whole United States is changing with regards to the issues, some of the issues with climate change and other things. So there's such as what happened in Houston a few years ago with a hurricane. They kind of parked off the Gulf there and provided 20 plus inches of rain to the Houston metropolitan area. A lot of areas there that were considered the low risk flood zone of flood zone X, which it's typically not required by the mortgage company that the consumer obtain flood insurance, those areas did flood as well. So certainly we have seen some changes taking place with regards to our climate, and areas that maybe typically didn't flood in the past even are now seeing some issues with flooding too.
Okay, so here's the conclusion, right? Hey, thank you so much for being here with us today, listening to Tom Roney as he shares his insurance knowledge with all of us. So listen, I do these videos because I want to be of service to this area. I changed the game because of my knowledge, but I want you to change the game because of your knowledge. That's why I do these videos. And so hopefully you've learned something today that you can share. As I said, check out my website, joebrownc21.com. You can learn more about me. You can search for homes in the area. You can read my blogs. I love sharing this information with you because South Tampa, Florida living is awesome.